Okay, so I guess my overall thoughts is I think I like the game. Um I don't think I have any issues with the game as a whole. I didn't get answers that I specifically wanted. I didn't get like I didn't get to see Master Yun Kafai. Didn't get to see Ouroboros and their master plan. Um, I didn't get to see Ouroboros' master, or at least learn about him. Um, like Ouroboros are among my favorite characters in this game, uh, and I wish more was peeled back on the curtains for them. This is what 3 plus 2 plus 4, 9 games of Ouroboros meddling, and we still have no idea what they're trying to do, what they're doing, who all their members are, what's going on. It's a lot to look at, and then not get any semblance of their goals. Um, with that said, though, um, it is an interesting capping off point. I I kind of want to say that I don't think the journey is worth it. I I don't think that playing all of the Trails of Cold Steel games is going to provide some sort of closure or finality. I think Trails in the Sky 2 did a really good job of capping things off and making everything come to a close with a few answers still left out there. There are still a ton of answers that I have right now. Like, we don't technically know that the curse is gone, you know? We didn't get to see the curse disappear. We didn't get to see the aftermath of the curse and the war and all other good stuff. So, the ending as it was presented to me, I feel like the journey was great, but if you want to play the game for something other than the journey, I'm not sure I can see the worth there. Yeah. I guess that'll just have to do for my overall thoughts. For story, was it satisfying? I'm gonna say no. I don't find myself satisfied with the story here. Like I said, there's just important things left behind about the curse that you don't have answers for, as presented for me so far. This is kind of why I wanted to do my thoughts right now and not do this final side quest, because the side quest might change things. But it is disappointing. Did it feel complete? I think there's some completeness there, but again, without knowing the aftermath of the curse and how the world is kind of setting itself up, our characters, at the very least, I was expecting some sort of epilogue or something like that, which don't seem to have. And then how is the pacing? The Trails games always have a pretty messy compilation of pacing criterias and things like that. But I said this at the very beginning of my playthrough. And I still think back to it, that it boggles my mind how you can end Trails of Cold Steel 3 on a massive cliffhanger and then start Cold Steel 4 with people getting drafted 2 weeks later, followed by a ton of cameos, then a mission with LeBron and Crossbow protagonists to get them up to speed what's going on. Felt like it was a gargantuan hype killer for me. It's just kind of crazy that you don't continue from that cliffhanger. And then what makes that worse is after all of that plays out, there's a dream sequence with the new Class 7 to remember Reen and wake up, only to recount what happened 2 weeks prior, immediately following the events of Cold Steel 3. At the very least, the game needed to open up with that particular section of Class 7 waking up. For my expectations, the game needed to pick up where Cold Steel 3 left off. No flashbacks, nothing. We see what happens, and then time skip happens if necessary. I've been anxious to pick up after Osborn grabs Valamar's neck and says, "Now, Reen, let us begin. Let us end this wretched fairy tale in ink, black as despair," and then a hard cut to black. You know? Like, I've been anxious to see what happens after that. And it could be a lot of overhype from me. Maybe the anticipation built up too much. But I wanted that start to happen with a bang. I wanted the ruckus to be brought right away. And it started off so dull and lukewarm, I suppose, that I just found it so disappointing. I also think there's a lot of fat in the game. Nearly everything prior to the Black Workshop invasion, along with the Merkaba rescues, take up a significant portion of the game and feel relatively pointless. I really, like, I kind of get it in some ways, but at the same time, none of that stuff needed to be there. If you wanted to throw in one rescue mission where all of the affiliates were being held or something like that, I'll give you that. You know, throw in some side quests there, cool. But to make it 3 separate missions for rescuing the affiliates, and then 3 separate missions, or 4 or whatever, to put stakes in the ground to find Reen, I think it was just a huge missed opportunity. And I don't know when I say this. I guess I don't, but if the game, I think I do, well, I'll just say now. If the game started out with breaking in, okay, if the game didn't start out with Class 7 waking up from their dream, or the immediate aftermath of Cold Steel 3, then the game starting out with the Black Workshop invasion, that would have been the type of hype and ruckus and excitement that I was looking for. The Black Workshop sequence was one of the most amazing sequences in all of Trails that I've ever done. It was so cool to have everyone just break in, and you get to control these teams, you get to control Reen, and you're all just going in there fighting dudes, and then you get to the final sequence of that area, and you got all the bad guys on one side, all the good guys on another side, and they're exchanging banter, they're fighting. It was so cool. It was absolutely awesome. And I I feel like the Trails formula could have been taken to a new height right there for me. It would have started this game off with a bang, and I probably would have liked it way more than I do right now. Thoughts on the story? Oh wait, thoughts on the story. Structure-wise, Cold Steel 4 reminds me a lot of Cold Steel 2. Rena's lost, allies need to be found, a war needs to be stopped. However, the major difference here is that we're actually a third faction this time around. Cold Steel 2 really struggled with this, where we pretended to be a third faction, but we were actually just helping out the government, basically. We were trying to stop the Noble Alliance. Everything we were doing was to prevent the Noble Alliance from gaining ground. So this time around, it actually did feel like, sure, we were hand in hand with Mille Mirage, but they were doing their own thing. We were doing our own thing. And so that was nice. On the other hand, though, it did feel a little too familiar to Cold Steel 2. Plot point, structure-wise, it could have been differentiated a little bit more. And then I'll repeat this once again. Breaking into the Black Workshop to rescue Reen was one of the coolest things that happened in the Cold Steel series for me. Felt like the stakes were high, the pressure was on, and the conversations and reveals were interesting. It was cool to see nearly all of the biggest and baddest people in Ereboni in one place scrapping it out. And then just imagine the game starting out with Class 7 and crew breaking into the Black Workshop and skipping all the nonsense before it. It's insane. It's super, super cool, and it's super, super insane how awesome that sequence was. And I like it a lot. It might be my favorite sequence. Well, yeah, it probably is my favorite sequence in any Trails game that I've ever played, and probably beyond. It was just that cool. You think that's part of the naivete of Class 7, that they thought they were a third faction in Cold Steel 2, even if they were puppeteered? Yeah, Cold Steel 1 mirrors Cold Steel 3, and 2 mirrors 4. I did kind of notice a few similarities as well between 1 and 3. But I guess now that you bring it up, there are quite a bit of similarities that I didn't realize until now. So it's a good point you bring up. The redemption complex of Cold Steel can feel obnoxious. Not everyone can be redeemed. Someone has to pay for their actions with their life. Furthermore, the fact that death has been averted for literally every character that has died in Cold Steel really cheapens any kills we may get. And I wrote that 70-ish hours into the game. I feel like no characters... nobody dies. We don't kill anybody. Nobody kills us in some permanent fashion. The only character that has ever died off the top of my head was Lue. And we didn't, protagonists don't kill him. Same thing with the third Anguis, the Faceless. We don't kill them. What about Rutger and Aryan Road? We didn't kill Aryan Road. The point I'm making, I could give you Aryan Road, but the point I'm making is that, well, I guess I'll give you Rutger. I guess. Hesitantly. They were already dead. I don't know if I want to give you full credit for that. Maybe 50%, half credit, maybe. And Osborne, we don't know if Osborne's dead. Because we don't know if Osborne's dead. Especially because Cedric survived the rivalry. Osborne could survive it. Rufus survived it. So, you never know. I mean, we are the good guys. We throw them in prison, not killing them. Well, like, I feel like there are characters that can't be redeemed. There are characters that are just so evil that there's nothing you can do about them. I don't know if we've necessarily come across any of those characters specifically, but some Ouroboros characters are not very nice people. So there is that. Like the Faceless, for example, he was not a very nice guy. Let's see. It's a shame it took 4 games to reach this point, but I find myself impressed by Ouroboros. Them trying to trigger the rivalries with ions among their other plans makes so much sense now that we know what's going on. I really like Ouroboros. I've already mentioned this, but basically every single character that's associated with Ouroboros is probably my favorite character. I haven't met an Ouroboros character that I don't like. They all have really cool quirks. They're all really strong. They all have interesting motives, and the organization as a whole is built on a very interesting platform. It's the most intriguing organization I've probably encountered in any video game ever, with the exclusion of Crucius in Tales of Symphonia. I just like them a lot. And then the Trails game formula strikes again for me. Characters are too cagey and cryptic. The literal end of the world is upon them, and they still feel the need to withhold vital information. This was... this has always been a problem with Trails, and it'll always be a criticism of me. It's pointless to me to be vague about things. If you don't want to say anything, just don't say anything. You know, the writing can just get frustrating, and that's just a Trails thing. It's something that I've grown accustomed to, but it doesn't make me happy that it's there. Cold Steel 4 is very reminiscent of Cold Steel 2 in plot development and structure. I find myself seeing a lot of similarities. Yeah, we already talked about that. And I guess it can't be a Trails game without side quests mucking up the place. Again, it's the end of the world, war is nigh, and instead of developing a plan to stop it, we're looking for the town with the best pies. Normally, I'm not bothered by this, but the Trails formula does weigh down on me with every game that doesn't do something new. And I know that Trails in the Sky the Third was a large departure from things, but that one was a miss for me. I do appreciate the departure of the natural formula that they had, but the structure as a whole of Trails games, I think, needs to be diversified. I don't think they should be revisiting the same plot structures and events over and over and over again. Cold Steel 3, every single area where we fight an ion, it's exactly the same plot-wise. We go in there, we fight them, we beat them, but we didn't actually beat them, and then we fight the ion, we beat the ion, but oh no, the enemy's about to power up, and then someone comes and saves the day. In this game, there was a lot of that too. There's something that I'll talk about later, but I'll just mention it now. The Deus Ex Machinas are incredibly frustrating to experience as a player. I can't stand being in a situation for these Trails games where I accomplish beating a boss, and afterwards we get the JRPG goodness of, I guess you're good enough to beat 5% of my power. And then all these bustas come through and just take all the glory and all the work that I have just done and assign it to themselves. it's this is I don't want to say it like this, and I shouldn't say it like this, and I don't mean it like this, but I'm gonna do it. It feels insulting as a player to do something like that. For example, what if a member of Ouroboros just stepped in at the last minute and killed Osborne instead of us? Like, that just sucks. I spent 4 games getting up to this point to fight this guy, and you're gonna take that kill away from me. It feels the same way with every other boss that gets Deus Ex Machina'd. It's just frustrating for me. You need other protagonists for that? Kevin as an example. Yeah, Kevin is a little ruthless. I'll give you that one. Do you think Falcom will bring changes? I don't think so, honestly. There's a very apt saying that what's not, you don't fix what isn't broken, or what's not broken you don't fix, something along those lines. And they have a formula that's working for them, and at least in the circles that I've seen or am a part of, a lot of people, or a lot of those people, are okay with this type of structure and whatnot. So I understand why they would keep it that way. There is a lot of appeal to it. It is reminiscent of anime, and it has a lot of those anime tropes that people gravitate to, regardless of what anime you're watching. Those tropes can be enjoyable to be a part of. But I definitely do not see a change in the future, as much as I would hope so. Let's see. I guess I'll read this as well. 70-ish hours into the game, and I've reached a nebulous point. I don't have many overall thoughts on the goings on, because at this point, the ending will decide whether the journey was fun or if the series was fun. And this was an interesting dynamic for me, because I like to play these Trails games for the journey. The twists and turns are nice, but I want to be with the characters as they grow, and I want to be with them as they experience, all the crazy stuff. There's a lot of information that the player gets that the characters don't get. So I can kind of like step into their shoes in that regard, and not necessarily care about the information that I know that they don't. But it was an interesting dynamic for me that 70 hours into the game, and I still found myself questioning where I stood with it. It's kind of a ludicrous thing to think about, that you spend 100 hours of the game, and the last 30 hours is where you start developing your opinion of it. I don't know how to phrase that any differently or elaborate on it, but there's that. And then members of the chat brought this into better perspective for me. The game has some very high highs, but also some very low lows. And I still agree with that. I think the ending is a very low low. I just don't... I just don't like the ending. I don't. You think they're aware on how broken Cold Steel 4 was? It was heavily criticized in Japan. It's probably the most divisive game since the third. Really? I know a lot of people were not happy with the cliffhanger. I did hear a lot about that. You got all the endings? I did not. I'm gonna give my thoughts first, and then I'm gonna finish the side quests and things like that. And let's see. One thing I don't understand is why Class 7 receives resistance when attempting to conduct the rivalries. The goal for all sides is to complete them, yet it's never as simple as going to from shrine to shrine to conduct the fights. This baffled me a lot, and it was in an extremely negative way. If everyone's intentions are for the rivalries to be done and over with, why would you start putting shields over the shrines and making us infiltrate a fort or an airship to disable the shield? Why would you send enhanced Jaeger cores to us to stop us from going to the final dungeon and all other stuff? Like, y'all should be just clearing the way, make sure nobody else interferes, and letting us mosey on in so that we can get this stuff done. It's one of those things that felt like we're going to add this in here because we can. It felt like fat. They wanted to delay the rivalry so it starts the eve of the war. If I almost want to say that is a satisfactory answer, except all the circumstances don't lead to that. If they wanted to avoid it, why would they set themselves up in those places? Like, I'm digging too deep into the matter, but it's the core of the matter that is the issue, in that it doesn't make any sense to me. If they don't want to do the rivalry, don't go to the shrine. You know, Osborne didn't need to be at that spot at that time if they didn't want the rivalry to be done, you know. But that's just that. Rufus killing Aryan Road was such an amazing debate. Holy cow. This was one of my favorite moments in this game as well. I never saw it coming. The dialogue that he had about it was super amazing and awesome. And it was just so cool. I was just like, that was so amazing. Remember when Rufus was likable in Cold Steel 1? That's what I'm saying. Like, that moment was the culmination of everything for me. He was this really nice guy, and then he was, you know, like, yeah, you know, I'm a guy that does things for duty and whatnot. I'm with the Iron Bloods, but I'm working with the government, you know, like, I'm still cool peoples with all you guys. And in that moment, he just reveals, you know, it's like, I'm not actually a nice person. That's just all a front for my true feelings. It was just so amazing, because Rufus is one of my favorite characters as well. He's just cold and calculating, and I like characters that do that sort of thing. So that was just super cool. I think Cold Steel 4 did a much better job at explaining things prior to the end of the game than previous entries. However, characters were still far too cagey when it's the end of the world and all. Yeah, I kind of went over that. Really looking forward to that scene in English. And Aryan Road was your favorite Anguis thus far? Aryan Road was amazing. Aryan Road is definitely one of my favorite characters as well. And that scene, like, that rivalry moment there was really nice too, because Aryan Road really does feel like a character that's all about justice and the forces of good. So it was just really cool to finally get more information on her, and then see her get one-upped as well. For characters, Celine turning into a cat girl is up there with the most absurd things I've ever seen in Trails of Cold Steel. Why was that necessary? Why was that in the game? I have no idea. I don't like it. I wish it wasn't there. Blah. All in all, I think they handled the juggling of the billion characters in a decent manner. I have my criticisms, but at the end of it all, Estelle and Lloyd's crew kept their distance. I do think that there were problems with the billion characters that are in this game, but I do think that my criticisms of there's just too many characters that are hogging all the spotlight and they need to kind of take a step back in Cold Steel 3, I actually think that was done to a few degrees in this game that really helped make it a focus on Class 7, Reen, and affiliates and things like that. Affiliates were on the outside and everyone else was in the lane, you know? So I kind of appreciate that. And then, you know, those affiliates got some spotlight here and there, and, you know, that was great, or it wasn't. For gameplay mechanics and design, would gameplay elements stand out? I'm glad they brought back trial chests. I like them. I was actually kind of surprised that they did away with trial chests in Cold Steel 3, so I was pleasantly surprised to see them be brought back. This goes into my next thing, that upgrading orders is cool. Before, in Cold Steel 2, the whole order or the trial chests were just to get overdrive with certain party members, but I think upgrading orders is a really cool way of deciding, you know, which orders and which characters do I value most. There's a really nice dynamic there. And I think I mentioned this in my Cold Steel 3 thoughts video as well, but orders are a fantastic addition to the Trails saga. I hope they keep them for the future. It's a wonderful mechanic, and I also hope that they play with these D orders, or whatever they're called, for the enemy. I thought those were really nice, and I wish more characters or more enemies use them. 38 hours in, and I think I might be getting character option overload. There's just so many to choose from. There's a lot of characters in this game. It is very overwhelming, and this game doesn't do anything to make it easier for you. When you have like 15, 20 characters to equip and put quartz into, and master quartz, and when they're swapping out characters, it becomes a huge ordeal to deal with. So in that regard, mechanically speaking, they really needed to do a lot to streamline that better. If you could create like presets that you could assign to characters, that would be amazing. That way, if a character leaves, you can take their preset and apply it to another character temporarily until your character comes back. It's mechanics like those that really elevate the game away from its shortcomings, and I hope to see improvements, drastic improvements, in later entries of the Trails saga, or whatever it's called. The side quests in Cold Steel 4 suffer from what I believe to be ludonarrative dissonance, or in words that I can understand, a conflict between the narrative of the story and the narrative of the gameplay. Many instances occur where the seriousness of a situation is downplayed in the game in order to allow for side quests to appear. It feels like padding, partly due to quests not really progressing any sort of relevant plot, but also because it makes no sense to divide time and resources away from the central core issues at hand. This is again, this is just another Trails thing that I would love for them to improve on. But I like to go back to that final moment before we make our final assault on Tuatha de Danann, or the Imperial Fortress, or whatever it's called. We have 5 hours, okay? 5 hours to prepare. And then we get all these side quests. And we're supposed to do all those side quests in 5 hours. We're supposed to fly across the country back and forth in 5 hours. It just doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't always have to make any sense. But when you put yourself in a position narratively where the gameplay doesn't make any sense, that's where you start running into problems. And that was a problem for me. And it's always been a problem for me in the Trails games. On the flip side, they're just side quests, so who cares? They're just side quests, you know? They don't really mean anything. Ultimately, I want to advocate meaningful side quests, and towards the later half of Cold Steel 4, those were sprinkled in. However, fatigue overtook me, and it was too late. Yeah, you know, around 70, 80 hours, I've already been burned a couple of times. I've done every single side quest prior to that point. I've read every single side quest out loud. None of them felt important. None of them felt meaningful. At some point, I gotta believe, well, if the first 70 hours were pointless, then I can't expect the rest of the 30 hours to be that. So let's stop wasting time. And that's just where I degraded to. But again, they're just side quests, who cares? Combat. The challenge was drastically ramped up compared to the previous games in a similar way to Trails in the Sky 2. The early portions were difficult and resources were scarce. However, after a certain threshold, fights became waiting games with HP sponges. This just could have been the build that I went with, giving Kurt like 90% evasion and having Musei just be an arts machine gun. But it took a while for me to find the build that I could with the resources I had. But I don't know, around 50 hours or so, I just started finding the groove and started kind of getting through the encounters much easier. And these last 30 hours or so, I was murdering things without much challenge. The Divine Knight battles are a totally different thing, though. Those things are super challenging, an amazingly challenging thing. In fact, Aryan Road was the first Divine Knight fight that really proved to be extremely difficult. That being said, all of the fights had a lot of challenges in them that were consistent throughout the game. And it actually ramped up for me. I still don't think it makes any sense that Cedric was higher up on the food chain as far as rivalries go, but than Aryan Road. But like ever since Aryan Road, the Divine Knight battles really started to ramp up, and even before that, they were already challenging in of themselves. So there was that. For dungeons, I didn't really have any favorite dungeons. I do like the general dungeon design of Trails of Cold Steel. I like that it's not very time wasty. There's not enemies everywhere. There's no random encounters or anything like that. So you can skip encounters if you want to. The layouts are very simple for the most part. Every now and then you'll come across some puzzles and things like that, but it's mostly just I would say for the most part it's just linear corridors with a branch or two here and there for chests or something like that, or a switch or what have you. And I do like that they take a simplistic approach to the dungeons. So there you go. Cardinal sins, forcing the player to use certain party members. In a game like Trails of Cold Steel, there's so many characters that want to get their limelight. I understand it, but you know, again, there's no tools to help elevate away from the issues that this presents. And then removing key party members without sufficient replacement. If you're gonna remove a party member, you gotta give me a party member that can replace them. And there are a large cast of characters, so you can replace people, but the problem is reconfiguring orbments and equipment is extremely atrocious when a character is gone, because you have to take every single ports off, move it over to the next character, move over any accessories they have, and then when you get your character back, you have to swap them all over and then re-equip the character that you just unequipped. It's a lot of work. Miscellaneous, almost done. For sound and music, solid music. I'll give the OST a listen for sure. With any luck, you may see an episode of Level Up This playlist on it someday. I didn't get to hear very much because of my speaker setup, and also I felt like the music as a whole was on the low side. Cold Steel 3 had that issue for me as well, but it could just be my speaker setup mostly. Voice acting, great voice acting as usual. It's unfortunate many voice actors couldn't reprise their roles, but we're living in a pandemic. I completely understand the hardships, and I think everyone did a great job. For graphics, the Trails of Cold Steel games have never been graphical powerhouses or masters of animation. Their strengths are their storytelling and characters. However, I find myself enjoying the outdated, air quotes, look. I will say though, as I did with Cold Steel 3, that the animations are lacking in a lot of areas. I do think it would be a small improvement in the grand scheme of things, but I would like to see the technical aspects of the animation expanded for 3D models in these games. We're in a weird spot where we have if there's a character and they want to turn around, they literally turn the entire character model around. You know, they don't move like a normal person would, and it is reminiscent of games of like the early 2000s and things like that, you know. So there is some desires and some wants to kind of see Trails kind of move into the next level and start implementing techniques that have been around for many years. You always just focus your attention on Reen and the kids. Everyone else are just extras for you, which you only bother with if the game is telling you, hey, go put Duvali in the party. I kind of do the same as well. You know, you could kind of see that happening for me in the last half of the game, where there was a character that they were forcing into my party. I'd put them into the party and then I'd swap them out for my main person that was in my final party. So that worked out for me in that sense. But in the early portions of the game, you don't really have that luxury, unfortunately, especially when Reen is not with you. Hajimari finally applies motion capturing for animations. That is nice to hear. I haven't seen or heard, or I haven't seen anything about Hajimari. I'm usually very media blackout when it comes to the Trails games. So I'm definitely looking forward to a Western release of that for sure. For replay value, does the game offer additional story content on a second playthrough to warrant playing the game again? Such as Fire Emblem Three Houses having 3 separate paths, and each path has their own take on a story that goes in certain directions. And I don't think this game has that. It all seems fairly compact, and you get all the story that there is to tell. Of course, you can pick up on things, you can get additional details, and all the other good stuff, but I think there's no new content to be had as of this moment right now. And if the developer is watching, I have a lot of criticisms of the Trails games, but I do want to say that my criticisms do come from a place of me wanting the series to improve and even reach out to a wider audience. I think there's a lot of stuff that holds this game back from being one of the greatest franchises of all time, and it's the criticisms that I have that would place that as an easier decision for me to make about the series. When I say, like, you know, the animations could be better, the structure of the story could be better, tools to help elevate the gameplay, all of these things are things that would help me enjoy the game better. And I want to enjoy these games better because they are among my favorite games that I've ever played. As crazy as it sounds, I started with Trails of Cold Steel 1, and I couldn't really put my finger on why I enjoyed the game so much. It was just so weird and kind of off the wall, and I never played a game like it before. But that ending twist with the twist at the end with Crow, like, really caught me off guard, and then it continued with the twist at the end of Cold Steel 2, and it kept me hooked for things to come, and I was happy to be a part of the Trails of Cold Steel saga. I enjoy the series as a whole. I don't regret playing any of the games. I played Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2 twice, in fact. I like the games a lot, so my criticisms definitely come from like a happy place of, you know, I can't wait to see these things improve for the game. And I really hope that at the very least some of the things that I've suggested find some way of making their way into the game. Not necessarily how I've suggested it, you know, I'm not a game developer or anything like that, but I'm hoping you guys can find a way to at the very least find a structure that is not so repetitive. I don't want to find myself looking at the story and then saying, well, here we go, this is gonna happen now. I want to be at the edge of my seat a lot. I want to experience hype moments a great deal of the time without having to kind of have like these long resting points before we get to the next one. But that, again, that's just a me thing. I think you guys have created a wonderful series. I can't wait to check out Hajimari, whatever the English name of that is going to be. I can't wait to see where the story goes from here, and I can't wait to play the Crossbell games and gain an even greater understanding of the Trails mythos and whatnot. So I definitely want to say thank you for the game. I may have not liked the ending as it has been presented thus far, but the journey was fun. I mentioned up above that the ending will decide whether the journey was fun or if the series was fun. And I think the journey was fun for me. I don't think the ending lived up to my expectations, and I don't think the ending makes you want to recommend the series to somebody. But I did enjoy playing the games regardless. So thank you very much for the Legend of Heroes games, and I can't wait to play the next one. Catch up on chat. All you can say is you definitely need to play Crossbell before Hajimari if you haven't already. Your criticism seems pretty accurate. Some things you disagree with, mostly because you thought more about the games and the connections. Cold Steel 4 is likely the lowest point of the series. Even in the future, you don't see them doing that many mistakes. You blame the idea of making a game that ambitious within a year. That could be it too. That could also be it. You make some great points there as well. But that is going to wrap it up for my thoughts here. I don't think I have anything else to say. Just to reiterate my overall thoughts, I think I'm okay with the game, having kind of gone through all of this. I don't like the ending. I want more answers. I want the shroud of mystery to be gone. I want to be left at a point where I can say, you know what, Cold Steel is done and over with, and I'm happy with it. You know, I don't have anything lingering from Cold Steel that needs to be answered. But with that being said, it seems like there's some answers waiting for us. So I'm going to end this thoughts here, and I'm going to get on to some of these answers. So there you go.